Tensions remain high between Alberta and British Columbia. BC's move to constrict the volume of diluted bitumen from oil sands to the west coast and that proposed Trans Mountain pipeline expansion has Alberta in a bit of a fury. It reacted by scrubbing talks on a major buy of electricity from British Columbia. When pushed by the Green Party leader on the jobs the pipeline would kill, not create, the Prime Minister delivered this.
When it comes to the energy and the environment and the economy, we know the two things go together. That is central to the national interest. In regards to energy and pipelines, there are three elements that need to work together. First of all, we need to get our resources to markets overseas safely and securely. Secondly, we put forward a historic world-class oceans protection plan to protect our coasts. And third, we put forward a real plan to reduce carbon emissions and meet our Paris targets. You can't get any of the three without getting all three. That's what this government understands.
All right, to discuss the road to peace, if there is one, we are joined by the federal referee between the two sides, Natural Resources Minister Jim Carr joins me in the studio. Minister Carr, we got pipelines sort of in jeopardy one side, electrical rates being threatened the other. I can't recall a province with this much animosity and economic retaliation going down. How concerned are you about this brouhaha?
Well, in a federation, you're going to have provinces who disagree with each other, and there are economic interests at stake. There are politics at play. Mm-hmm. This is a federally approved pipeline, and it was a pipeline that was only approved after we heard from literally tens of thousands of Canadians, after we announced a $1.5 billion ocean protection plan. Why is the pipeline in Canada's interests? Because it creates jobs, because it opens up expanded export markets. 99% of our exports in oil and gas go to the United States. Not a good idea. This pipeline will open up Asia. And it's also going to signal to investors that Canada is a place where you can do business. We are in a transition to a low-carbon economy. That transition is going to take a while. Meanwhile, we'll use the resources we have to help finance the next move.
All right, so the Prime Minister says this pipeline will be built, but clearly BC says we're going to use every tool in the toolbox to slow this down. Where's your line of patience? When does patience run out by the federal government? Well, and if it does, what can you do?
Well, what are they going to do? They've said they're going to consult British Columbians. We have consulted Canadians, and we've determined that it's in Canada's interests. So if the Premier wants to consult, he can consult. But this is a pipeline that has the approval of the Government of Canada, while British Columbia has a view, and British Columbia is responsible to its citizens, however divided they might be on a particular project. The Government of Canada is responsible to the Canadian interest, which we have defined, and we believe today as strongly that it's good for Canada as we did when we approved it.
But I'm still trying to get, what do you do if John Horgan and the Green Party alliance he's with just keep on putting these consultation delays and talk about, constricting?
Well, we've already intervened at the National Energy Board on a motion, and that would set up a standing panel so that there would be unnecessary delays. We think it's important, and we've said so, and we've acted on that. But to speculate on what a government may or may not do is probably not a wise thing to do.
What's an unnecessary delay? Define that.
Well,
is a year an unnecessary delay?
An unnecessary delay is longer than what reasonable people should take to make a decision. And if they are going to use procedural tactics that will attempt to thwart a project that's in the national interest, then Canada will have a serious interest in that.
But that's clearly what they're doing now.
They're consulting with British Columbians. And so we have already consulted. Canada has consulted. And after that consultation, we have made a decision, agreeing with the 157 conditions of the National Energy Board. For all of the good reasons that I'm trying to express to you and the people who are watching this, we think it's good not only for the rest of Canada, but also good for British Columbia.
Well, help me understand one thing then. Yeah. If you decide that there are unnecessary delays and that this project should go ahead and the consultation is done, what does that look like? How do you, as a federal government, say, nope, start the pipeline, start building it right now?
The National Energy Board is an independent regulator. It has what it needs to make the decisions that they now see the Government of Canada says is in the national interest. They have procedures that they will follow. We have already intervened on a motion at the National Energy Board when we believed that the procedural delays were not consistent with our view of what should happen and the rate at which it should happen for this pipeline.
Speaking of the National Energy Board,
Yeah.
what does the National Energy Board look like in your new assessment plan that's going to be rolled out this week?
Well, you're going to find that out very, very soon, Don.
Very, very soon.
Very, very soon.
Tomorrow? Like,
I would say that that's a capital V, very.
That would be tomorrow. I would be T tomorrow. But
That's your speculation, not mine.
Okay, let me ask you this question then.
Yeah.
Would the Trans Mountain Pipeline, as currently approved, pass the new approval test if it was restarted from zero?
Well, you may remember that we added layers of
Right,
consultation to Trans Mountain because a court case said that the Harper government had insufficiently consulted. So we put an expert panel together. They went up and down the line. We heard from 10,000 more Canadians, so we responded to that. So I would say that those extra layers of consultation should become less necessary if we have a regulatory regime that has predictable timelines and clarity for proponents.
One thing that certainly was in the discussion papers is already rolled out, so I'm not trying to get secret details, but it sort of said, look, don't have several authorities, have it all under one roof. Does that make a lot of sense to you?
It's a very sensible idea.
All right. How I'm kind of beating my head against a wall here. Let me try one other way. Let me have one other try on this one. Indigenous people.
Yeah.
You have made a very strong commitment that Indigenous people have to be consulted in a very meaningful way. Is that going to be enhanced under this assessment? Will you be looking at better ways to consult with them? Because there's...
Yes, we will.
Yeah.
Because we have seen time and time again that insufficient consultation with Indigenous community doesn't lead to project approvals. It leads to a lot of time in the courtroom.
Yes.
And we're not interested in more time in the courtroom. We're interested in more consultation with Indigenous communities. And by the way, on Trans Mountain itself, with Indigenous communities, we have established a monitoring committee, co-developed by Indigenous peoples and the Government of Canada, to make sure that these communities are involved in monitoring the safety of the line and throughout its life cycle. That in itself is a step forward.
All right. I assume I'm booking you again for the show tomorrow. Is that what you're getting at?
Soon.
Soon. All right. Thank you, Jim Carr. Always a pleasure. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.